Welcome back to the Luminous Arts. This time I'm talking to my friend Luke Taylor from all the way over in Sydney. He's the lead engineer for Advitech, the company that makes the Pixlite line of LED controllers. We've been using his hardware for years, giving them shit when they need new features, and working with them to keep the needs of light artists front and center in their development process. This episode is a nerdy one, so be forewarned, we definitely get into the weeds. We talk about how his company formed and the path he's taken as a developer working in the pixel control world. Sorting through the myriad of pixel technologies can be a dizzying process, but his company does a great job demystifying it for amateurs and professionals alike. We talk about the fundamental ways that artists use LED controllers to tie their installations together, what kinds of features are important and matter to people, and the line between controller and pattern engine. It's a fascinating, if not a totally geeky conversation, and I'm stoked we finally got to connect and have a good chat. Yeah, dude, so where are you right now? You're in Melbourne?
Yeah, Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah, but it's actually not right in, it's not in Melbourne, it's like right outside. What's it called? It's like a little section?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're in the burbs, I guess you'd say. Little small industrial area is where our actual work is, which is where I'm at now. But yeah, I guess we all just consider it Melbourne. It's
That's
probably
cool.
half an hour drive into the CBD.
Yeah. So who else is there at the office with you? Does Craig still work with you?
No, Craig's not with us anymore.
Bummer. He's so cool. I like that guy.
Yeah, it is a bit of a bummer, but that's the way things go, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a few people working from home at the moment, and a couple away because of, the world we live in these days.
Yeah, how's that been for you guys over at Avitech? Is it just everybody's working remotely, but you're in the office.
Well, a few of us are still in the office. We've had varying restrictions sort of coming and going down in Victoria. It's different on a state-by-state basis. So, but yeah, software engineers can work from home pretty easily. So that's been all right.
Yeah, I think that's like kind of the world is waking up to that. I mean, at least for some professions, it's easier, cheaper, and more convenient to work remotely. But there is really something to be said for having people in the same physical location. I'm starting a new business in addition to digital ambience, and it's difficult to get a team together and to make people form cohesive teams when you're not in front of each other.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's been a pretty global experiment at the moment, the whole working from home thing. But yeah, I agree. I mean, you can't fully substitute from being able to, be in a room together and just talk about something in person and just turn around when you need to and have a chat. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's something to be said for like face-to-face connection, and even through Zoom, it's just not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same. That's right. So what business are you starting?
Well, the business is called Lumison, and it's essentially taking UVC and circadian lighting and combining them into the same system managed by a web platform. So the concept is health and wellness lighting through UVC plus circadian lighting.
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it relies heavily on understanding occupancy of an indoor space. You know what I mean? So right. The only way to safely apply UVC in an area is to understand who is in that area so that you can intelligently switch on and off the UVC portion when no one's in a space. And what that does is allows you to like selectively sanitize different areas in accordance to occupancy. And wow. So it's a little bit software, a little bit of hardware. The hardware is mostly just it's like turnkey fixture design. So it's not a real heavy lift on the hardware side of things. It's been a much more in-depth process to design the software that controls the system. Yeah. But the cool thing is the software is built on this open source IoT platform, and you can really control anything with it. It's almost like it's like an operating system for physical space. It's a really cool concept.
Yeah, right. So you're gonna tap into building management system and sort of try and get sensor information about where people are moving around.
Yeah, it can work on a couple different paradigms. Essentially, you can you can tap into an existing building management system, or you can deploy like off the shelf IoT sensors. So for example, in an office without without a building management platform, we could come in and set up Z-Wave occupancy sensors throughout a building, and then essentially control our lighting or existing lighting through that system. But with a building with an existing building management platform, we would tap into the sensor data of that platform and then use that to direct the function of our lighting.
Yeah, right.
So,
okay. And you're going to give people a sort of web portal to access and control it all.
Yep. Yep.
Nice. That's a big project, man.
Yeah, it is a big project, but it's coming along, and it's because we're kind of springboarding off existing open source software. Yeah. It hasn't been as difficult as you'd think to get like a V1 spun up and running. And I mean, who knows, man? Like, it's just an idea, it's a concept, and I was kind of getting bored, honestly, with digital ambience and just the types of installations that we've done and continue to do. They almost seem like they're falling into a pattern. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're different form factors of the same type of LED installation. And it's like, it's cool, but it's like, yeah, I wanted to try something new. I wanted to work with a different set of people. And this was a great opportunity to try that out, and to try something out that would be more scalable, to try building a more traditional business. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's been an insane amount of work. And I kind of like that, I like that hectic. I like that.
Yeah. Definitely seem to be keen for trying new things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how old are you guys now? Advitech is what, like
7 years old?
7 years. Yeah, that's about
roughly.
How old Digital Ambience is. We're a little bit older.
Yeah.
About that old.
Yeah.
And so I guess for people who don't know who you are and what you do, Advitech is a company that makes your company makes advanced LED control hardware. Control hardware, and then the software. I would almost call it firmware, really, to control that hardware.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And after trying like a bazillion different products, Digital Ambience has, we've used your shit forever because it's just hits the right mix. And it's like, it's like a Swiss Army knife for LED pixels, which is which is important.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's
been good. I mean, I appreciate you making the system.
Yeah, it's been an adventure, that's for sure. The firmware that runs on it is probably been the key part of our R&D, really. In more recent times, I suppose, hardware design has taken more of a front step, but yeah, software is really at the heart of it all. Whether it's the software that, I mean, you've got the Smode shirt on now. I see you're obviously.
Dude, when am I going to get the Advitech? When do I get an Advitech sweatshirt? I've bought enough of your product. You owe me a sweatshirt.
That's true. That's it. I mean, the software is at the heart of it all, isn't it? Really, even if you might not think about it, you look at a physical product and think that's electronics. But really, it all comes down to the software at the end of the day.
It really does, man. And I think that's the world that we live in. It's a world that's governed by software. And excuse me, a piece of hardware is only as good as the software that's running on it. And
yeah.
I mean, now that's true of our kind of hardware. There's a whole lot of hardware that doesn't, there's like tools but even that, even like tools nowadays, they're running software.
Yeah, 100%. You wouldn't. I mean, this might be semi-common knowledge, but even an SD card that you put into something that you think is running software, even the SD card is running software inside it, you know.
Is it really?
Yeah, there's a microcontroller inside an SD card that's got software on it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right, for sure. Well, I mean, yeah, you got to direct those bits to the appropriate junctions or whatever. Yeah, man, it's interesting. It's like, it's cool though. I like it. And I like the concept of like an intelligent. I like the concept of being surrounded by devices governed by logic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And programmable logic. It gets real problematic though. I mean, it's, you know, it's all black boxes to most people. Like you don't really know what your devices are doing. You don't. I mean, you know, like you said, like an SD card has logic in it. You know, everything has some kind of microcontroller running somebody's code, somebody's decisions.
Yeah, that's right. Totally. Yeah, well, I guess there's been a fair bit of you know, privacy related concern in recent times, considering everyone's got the computer sitting in their pocket 24/7.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, privacy is kind of a weird concept. It's an interesting concept to consider, because the people's concept of privacy and then their comfort level around privacy, it's not really like, it's not linear. Like it's not logical. You know what I mean? Like people give up their privacy very willingly in circumstances where you'd be like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. That's like some George Orwell shit right there. And then they go nuts about things that, you know, are comparatively much less intrusive. So it's just it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Well, I do think sometimes that the big boys in the industries sort of tell a bit of a narrative of, you know, what suits them. You know, it's this privacy conversation comes from one of those players in tech that's trying to push a certain type of agenda, and they're all having arguments over it. It's pretty interesting, pretty funny to watch it play out from a general layman's perspective.
Yeah, you mean like like Dorsey and like the big tech leaders, or
even just like Apple versus Facebook. That's probably been a recent one of.
It's the soap opera of our times. It really is.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
How is that perceived in Australia? Are people like super focused on privacy? Like I know in Germany, man, Germany is incredibly privacy focused.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like people are very, very like aware and concerned of digital privacy in Germany, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, well, I guess all of the EU is a bit more, I suppose, progressive in that sense of trying to lead the way. You know, you've got the GDPR, you know, that's trying to, you know, have some kind of legislation over the Digital Privacy Act and all that sort of thing. So it's interesting. I don't personally feel like too many Australians are anywhere near that concerned about it, but it might also just be the people that I associate with.
Right. Yeah. So are you like, what's your social life like in, you pretty much just like in your clan, like in the company, you know, it's like your company is the crew and that's your.
No, I don't think so. I think, no, definitely not. I mean, everyone has their own social circles here. We've got quite a few different staff that are, I would say, very different in their personal life. But that's great. I mean, everyone here sort of brings their own perspective and their own level of experience. You know, we've got people that are in uni and fresh out of uni, and, you know, we've got a couple of veteran software developers that have been in the industry for decades. So, you know, they're not necessarily all hanging out with each other after work, but it certainly means that, you know, during our work here, there's a lot of different perspectives and experience levels and personalities, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. It's good to have diversity, man. Like it's really important to have like a range, like a broad range of perspectives.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, Digital Ambience is funny because it's definitely more of a group of friends, and then Luminous is very much, you know, kind of like hand-picked developers that don't have a lot of social overlap. So it's kind of interesting to see how both of those dynamics play out in a business environment. And on the one hand, I really like having a group of friends that come together with common experience to tackle like creative challenges. And at the same time, that can lead to real problems when like somebody's not working out, but it's like you're super good friend, you're close friends with them.
Yeah.
So it's hard to balance that and like, oh shit, well, this guy or girl is just not the right person for this job, but I can't fire them because they're my homie.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean?
As soon as you mix that personal work life, it presents a whole set of challenges. But
it really does.
You know, you've got I think particularly, I mean, that makes sense to me on the surface, what you just said about digital ambience versus the new company that you're working on, because I mean, digital ambience is such a creative company that, you know, it makes more sense to have that kind of demographic of people that are really close to each other and share similar kind of passions, and, you know, can really get into the groove of something creative together, as opposed to an engineering project where, you know, you've got a requirement and you need to actually just generate the required output to achieve that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Digital ambience grew very much out of like a bunch of people coming together to tackle like some problem, like some art projects, you know, and then that grew into a business and evolved.
And was all that, I mean, I know you did a lot of VJing and stuff like that, you know, early on, but with your art projects, was that all centered around Burning Man, or was there another forum that you came together on that with?
No, man. Digital ambience actually it came from my work doing concert touring. And then when I was finished with that, I moved to the Bay and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I just kept getting asked, but there was a number of lighting companies that were kind of in orbit around the area that I was working, and I just kept getting asked to do the design and implement these really weird oddball lighting projects in like commercial spaces. Yep. Like our first ever project, the project that really launched digital ambience, was this like 60-foot acrylic dragon that got installed in this dude's corporate headquarters down in Los Angeles. The company was called what was it called? I can't remember. Anyway, it was essentially they buy and sell airplane parts. They're like the Amazon.com of like airplane parts. And it's a privately held company. And the guy who owns it, he's like Unical is the name of the company. The guy who owns it is a very eccentric guy. And he was just like, I want a Chinese dragon in my lobby, and I want it to glow, and I want it to be animated, and like blah, blah, blah. So he contacted this company that I was getting LED from. And one of the founders of that company was actually my roommate at that time. So he was like, yeah, I've got this really weird guy down in LA. You should go check it out. He wants like some dragon lit up. And I was actually down in LA for another project. I'm like, what is, like, what the hell? What is this? And I stopped by, and it was just like this ridiculous sculpture going in. So yeah, I mean, it's like commercial permanent installs that where each one is like a custom technology challenge. Yeah. It's like trying to figure out a different system. But like I was saying, it's, at this point we've done so many of these things. It's just like, it almost feels like rinse and repeat. It's like, all right, what do you want to stuff LEDs in now? Like,
so you don't feel like it's bespoke each time still?
No, it is definitely bespoke, but it's, I think I just know the technology well enough that it's just starting to, it's not like, I don't feel, like that little bit of panic when somebody asks you to do something and you're like, yeah, I can probably do that. And then you like go and you got to figure it out. And like, you think you have a solution, but it's like, you're not positive. And then you like get all the parts and you start to install it. And you're like, well, hopefully, like, I think it's going to work this way. And then it doesn't. And then everything goes to shit and you have to like figure it out on the fly. And like, that doesn't happen that often anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you like being stressed?
I mean, not stressed, but I definitely like that like challenge of trying to figure something unique out, putting together like a
Yeah, I
really
get that.
crazy novel system. And
Yeah.
yeah, there is still some of that. It's just there's less of it. I want I'm still looking for bigger projects that will push us in different directions and like we still like there are still some really cool problems that we're asked to solve, especially around like volumetric LED lighting. So doing like 3-dimensional arrays, and I'm really into that. Tying in different building systems with installations that we do, or different data sets. So,
Yeah.
having like data analytics that express themselves on LED installations, that's super cool.
Yeah, that is cool. That's very cool. I like the stuff you were talking about with Timo as well, and one of your other podcasts. That sort of live music control going to the lights as well. That stuff I really love.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I was actually just working with Timo.
Oh
He,
yeah,
I think you guys introduced me to him actually, but yeah, he was helping me understand Elm. That
yeah,
software.
yeah. Of course,
It's
yeah,
funny. It's good software, but it's very much. It's like it is excellent mapping platform. It is not a very good live manipulation software. And what I
yeah,
mean by that is like you can map really complex shapes with Elm, and it's awesome. Like it's so much smoother to map in Elm than it is to map in Madrix, right?
yeah,
Because Madrix is like this grid. It's like you're stuck on this grid and
yeah,
that's it. It's
yeah,
like LEDs don't exist on grids anymore, homie. Like we have evolved to the point where we use curves and like circles and
yeah,
Elm is great because it gets that. But the other side of Elm where you actually like manipulate content across that LED array,
yeah,
it's just not as mature as Madrix.
yeah.
So you
And
know
I
what I've
think it's
started.
also a little bit sort of maybe hard to map truly 3D in it. Like I know you've got different stages. I haven't had that much personal experience with it, but I know you've got the different stages, but it's almost like this paradigm of a 2D flat structure and then, mapping those different stages together to try and create something 3D rather than truly being able to just put points in space.
Yeah, neither of those two environments are true 3D environments,
Yeah.
Madrix or Elm. They're all
Yeah.
postcards in space. You call it, 2D
Yeah.
layers
Yeah.
stacked. And I don't do anything 3D really in either of those two platforms. All my 3D work is done in Smode
Yeah.
because Smode is an actual 3D engine.
Yeah, it's cool. I haven't even looked at how it works. It'd be cool to see you doing something in it in action one time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually not the best Smode programmer. I bring this guy Vincent and I fly him in from France. He's such a funny guy, man. Vincent is like he's like one of the best Smode programmers in the world. He was like working with them since the beginning. Um, but he lives pretty much off the grid. He's kind of like a drifter. And he refuses to get a smartphone. So he has this like flip phone that he carries around with him. Right. So we'll fly him into the US to work on projects and he'll be like, hey, I'm stuck at the airport. I'm like, well, can you get an Uber? Can you like come over? He's like, no, I can't get an Uber. I don't know. It's like
He's
he
not going to
has
be
like
able to physically get around soon, or
well, he has like a paper map that he'll unfold and he'll
that's
be
fun.
like navigating with a paper map. And I shit you not, he has this compass that's like a World War I compass. It's like an OG like fucking pocket compass that he will navigate.
That's
He'll
cool.
navigate around with. And it's like he's just such a cool character, man. I want to do one of these with him actually as well at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you thought about having a group conversation before in this, or is it too hard to logistically manage?
I don't know, man. Like I can see doing a group conversation, but I think that it might be hard to have as deep a conversation as one on one. It's hard enough to have, with latency and the way internet conversations go. It's hard enough to have like a one on one conversation where you can each have equal turns to talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It would certainly be nicer if I was sharing a beer with you
Oh, I know.
at the
Well, it's
same
beer time
location.
here, man.
Yeah.
It's 9:30 at night.
It's only the afternoon, so I've just had a coffee to make sure I can stay alert.
Well, what time is it? What time is it there now?
It's 3:30 in the afternoon.
3:30. All right. Yeah, it's a respectable hour.
Yeah, that's it.
So do you ever work on art projects now at this point, or are you pretty much fully involved in just the hardware?
No, not really. I mean, love to, but I just don't see that really being the direction of Advotech per se. We got into it through, I suppose, a mix of electronics design and software design, and then being creative with that with a Christmas lighting show.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a shame to not be able to stay involved in a way in doing that, but it's a phase, and just got to commit everything that we can to building up what Advotech actually is to be as good as it can be, I guess, for the moment.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And I think that, you guys are definitely on the right path. I know that you got started in the Christmas light scene, right? Which is
Yeah,
funny because the Christmas light scene is like this weird cousin of like the light art scene that I'm part of. Like they
yeah,
share the same tools kind of, and it's like, but there's like a wildly different aesthetic.
yeah. I know, and I think that even within the Christmas light scene, I suppose if you can call it a scene, it's there's definitely a lot of different styles, and I think that there's certainly a tendency to just try and cram as many lights as they possibly can, and make it all do some color wash sort of thing at a high level, which is not
Right.
really my personal taste, but it's certainly becoming more, I suppose, achievable for more DIY people at home to get involved and
Oh, well,
experiment and do something cool like that.
it's blown up, man. Like just being around on being like part of the light art community, you see it like all over the place, and there are these like weird little pockets of like enthusiasts who are trying to do crazy shit with Christmas lights, and you're like,
That's it.
whoa. And they're using the same tools. They use the same tools, man.
Yeah, and some of them even use stage lighting
Oh yeah.
effects and have moving heads. I'm like, man, this is crazy. It's like a rock concert on this guy's lawn. Like, I'm into it, but I wouldn't want to be his neighbor.
Right, that's the thing. It's like,
Yeah,
what's the end goal here?
yeah.
What are we pushing to?
But
So is that how,
sorry.
I was wondering if that was like the original like market for Advotech controllers.
Yeah, well, I mean, originally it was, and it was more almost shouldn't say experiment, but we didn't really start the company with necessarily the intention of quitting what we were doing and selling pixel controllers and making a full-time living off it. It grew into that, obviously, but yeah, I mean, we were developing those controllers for this is my business partner, who's also
What was that? It's you're a little far away from your mic, so it's
oh
you're
sorry
fading in. That's okay.
yeah. So my business partner, his name's also Luke. He was doing that sort of at home Christmas lighting display for quite a long
It's
time.
really confusing, like because both you guys are Luke.
I know,
Like,
and there's another Luke that works here as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a bit confusing. But anyway, yeah, he was into it at his house, and he was doing back in the day where he had like this Morse code, like little device he would tap that you would normally send Morse code out with, and he would use that to try and like pick up different beats and things in the music and create like these little time sliced windows, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then program different effects in there. So back then it was very manual, I suppose, what was being done. And then he started doing that display at this it was a community display. It was like at this joint school/church property, and that's where I was like, hey, I want to get in on this and be involved. And I suppose we started making our own control systems for RGB LEDs, and then subsequently for pixel LEDs, just for fun, really. It's like a learning experience more than anything. That's how I learned C. I didn't really know about that beforehand. Just he actually designed some hardware, and then was sort of like, it's going to need some firmware to actually make it work. And so I was like, yeah, I reckon I could probably help you figure that out. And so we worked on it together and made that stuff. And eventually we decided,
cool.
Why not sell it and see if anyone else online is interested. It was all very Christmas-like community based, on forums and things like that.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing, that it really did come out of the community, and like you get that sense, when I started using Pixelite, it was like in that transition period where you were going from like kind of a community project to more of a proper product. What was the original, like what was the OG platform? Like what hardware did you use back in the day to create those original units?
What electronics did we write it on?
Was it your own custom controller, or did you base it on something like an existing microcontroller, like a Pi or a?
No, it wasn't put together module like a Pi. It was custom electronics from day one, running on the STM microcontrollers. So we originally tried writing Pixelite on an 8-bit microcontroller, and we weren't satisfied with what kind of performance we could get out of that. So we went up to the 32-bit ones. And yeah, it's progressed. We've stayed with that family the whole time. Actually, we've progressed. We're on our 3rd generation at the moment, and yeah, they're awesome little chips. Really, they can do a lot, and that's what I really love about programming too. Personally, like I really enjoy the aspect of making something physical sort of happen out of the code rather than just programming on computers. So
absolutely,
yeah, I love that aspect of it. Yeah.
Well, there is something special about having like playing with a system that has like a virtual system that has reach into the real world. That's why I like IoT so much.
Yeah, totally.
It's like you're programming reality, and that's cool.
That's it. Yeah, I love it. And no one ever understands it though. No one other than a programmer or someone that's got a similar interest understands when you say, shit, yes, I just flashed that LED for the first time, like some status LED, a boring little red LED on a PCB or something like that, but it is an achievement when you're into that kind of thing.
So how did you settle on that microcontroller? Like you must have gone through iterations and like played around. I have a couple buddies who are working on an LED control platform, and they've gone through like a handful of different microcontrollers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I probably wouldn't say that ST are the only vendor that we could achieve the same thing with. I guess the reason we're still using them is partly because we've been using them for so long that we've got a good grasp on them. And it's partly because they pack a lot of features into the silicon. So, to achieve what we're trying to do with a fairly cheap microcontroller at the center of it, you've got to actually, take advantage of some of the physical peripherals in the device. So,
like what are some physical features or some features that are baked in that you guys use?
Like for example, DMA controllers and the flexibility of DMA. So, it's originally in Pixelite Mark 1, in the first ones, it was just commands, just manually the processor sort of bit banging the output, like literally a command saying, turn this line high, turn it low now, wait this much time, that kind of thing. But that's not as scalable. So it's cool when you can start, offloading some of that sort of work to the physical devices using that kind of DMA.
Explain DMA to people who don't know what that is.
Well, direct memory access is what it stands for. It's basically just how to explain it. You imagine that you've got a physical piece of silicon that runs in parallel with your CPU, and it can move things around different parts of the device. So you can program it to take some certain data from a region in RAM and move it to another region in RAM, or move it into another piece of the silicon that is a timer, or a hardware peripheral, or like an SPI peripheral, or a GPIO port. So, and then the ST chips just have some neat little ways of linking things together too. So they've got this nice. It's not like an FPGA, but they've got.
I was just gonna ask, like, have you fucked around with FPGAs before?
Yeah, they're sick. They're awesome. Yeah,
they're expensive too, though.
They are, and it's not just the FPGA; it's all the other stuff that goes around it, like the fact that you now need, God knows, 4 power rails or something like that to drive the thing, and you might need they often don't have embedded some of the stuff embedded in that a microcontroller would have, like RAM. So now I've got to put some DDR RAM on, and that's way overkill. Like, I don't need a gig of DDR RAM.
Isn't that the point of the FPGA though? You can turn it into whatever hardware you want. So an FPGA, absolutely, for people who don't know, is like a piece of silicon, almost like a processor that you can simulate different hardware with. So it's almost like a blank slate of hardware that you can just create memory or create processor or create whatever it is that you need to create your system.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, to be honest, this kind of product would lend itself well to an FPGA architecture for sure. But nonetheless, we've been able to achieve good results without going down that path. So we haven't for now. It's also a very different. You need different types of developers to work on that as well. Like, it's not the same thing as ordinary programming of firmware, and that is not the same thing as programming software on a PC. So I guess.
Sure. So are you guys split basically between hardware and software people? Like, do you have a team of software and a team of hardware developers, and they work in tandem, or how does that break down?
Yeah, definitely the people that are doing the software design and not the ones doing the electronics design. But they've also got a pretty good understanding of electronics from being in the industry, and because their software focus is on firmware development. So you have to. So yeah, definitely different people working on those different aspects, but there's also a lot more, I guess, to the company as well. Apart from just the engineers developing stuff, there's the production team and that sort of side of things as well, which we've put a lot of focus on.
What's the production team? What do you mean production team?
Oh, I mean, in terms of actually manufacturing the physical product.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a whole nother thing again. It's like create an electronic design, create some software that can run on it. Okay, well, now how do you build that reliably, and how can you manufacture that? And
do you manufacture in Australia, or do you have that out in China?
No, originally we outsourced it to China, and we just said, look, here's our design, you just make this and then send it back to us, and we'll program it with firmware and we'll test it and stuff like that. But it was way too hard to get consistent quality out of doing that. So, like, we would fix a problem, and then a month later that'd be fixed and another problem would happen. And then it was just a never ending sort of issue with that. So we onshored it, and we do some of the electronics assembly in-house, and we outsource some of it to a local company who does some of the other parts of the assembly, and we do all the mechanical assembly and quality control and that kind of thing in-house. It's been so much better doing that. It's a lot more complicated to manage because you've got to manage like hundreds of different components and timing of all of those. So it's been an interesting journey to figure out the best way to manage all that, but it's so worth it.
So you guys have just like a basement full of pick and place machines, or?
No, the SMT side of things is what we outsource, and then we've got a machine for doing through-hole, a selective soldering machine. Have you seen those before?
What's it called?
A selective soldering machine. It's like a robot that has the solder bath comes up with this nozzle, and it's programmed to drive around and go up and solder some pins and move this way and then drop down and move over again. And so, we've got people here that put all of the through-hole parts in, but then the machine actually goes through and does all the soldering on them.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Cool. I mean, I like that paradigm of like making things in-house. We're trying to figure out how to do that with the fixtures we're manufacturing. I mean, fortunately, there's some pretty good fixture manufacturers in China that we've worked with for a long time. But hearing about your experience with quality and QC is just that's the big unknown. It's like, can we have consistent quality over a large run of these devices?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a challenge in any business to manage quality. So, if you don't actually have the control to change things that you need to change to improve that, then you're really at the mercy of someone else and how good their quality control system is. So then there's not much you can do about it except change suppliers.
Yeah, pretty much. Man. So I know you guys were working with, you guys had a big contract. I don't know if I can even say who it was with, but you guys had like a big contract. Cannot say who it was with. All right, fine. Well, so that big contract, are you still like, that was with one of the big tech companies, and are you still working with them?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, that's been great. Really interesting to work in a different type of market to anything we've worked in the past. I mean, you've obviously got a lot of experience in artistic sort of light artist market. We call you guys light artists internally.
Well, that's what we call ourselves light artists.
Yeah, that's it. But you're also in the architectural space, and there's a bit of crossover there. But one thing that's been interesting about this project from our side is seeing how this technology can get used in different markets. And every market is unique, and they have their own interesting challenges. But yeah, I mean, what you were just referring to is basically like logistics processing. So how can our control systems help people in factories more efficiently process just bulk parcels and pick and pack operations really is the
right. It's a much more industrial use, but it's like animated lighting can be used for so many different things, and there's that's a really cool example of a company using animated lighting to streamline a process in an industrial setting.
Yeah, that's it. And it'll be really interesting to see what other opportunities like that come up in the future. I mean, it could be just a special case, but I don't think so. I think certainly people will, as the technology becomes more ubiquitous, people will find more interesting ways to work with it. And I think making it easily accessible to people is probably one of our roles. One of the roles we have at Advotech, and one of the things we're trying to do, because you've got people like yourself and the people you hang out with are very technical, very switched on. I think quick learners, and really actually enjoy getting into the details of the technology. I think there's so many other people out there that are doing still artistic things, but just don't have that level of technical expertise. So it's an interesting challenge to try and help make the technology available to them as well, I think.
Yeah, well, your product is cool because it just speaks a pretty universal protocol, universal language, of lighting, and it's like, do whatever you want with it. We speak this language. You guys are like a Swiss Army knife of addressable pixels, and that's the cool thing about the firmware that you've written. That is the Swiss Army knife. It is a very, very useful tool in like the stage between soldering your installation together and making patterns for it with a mapping tool. You have to like configure and address those pixels. And that's actually that feature that you wrote for us, where It allows us to count pixels on an installation.
Yeah.
We just finished an installation where we're just throwing pixels into this tree, and it's like the ability to count how many pixels are wrapped around each branch. You can't do that by hand, man, and this is like a constant thing in all of our projects. And it was cool that we could work with you to implement that feature.
Yeah. Well, it's good to get the feedback. Sometimes it's the simple things that can make a difference.
Have you heard from anybody else using that feature, the pixel counting feature in your thing? Whether people use that?
I don't know if they do, to be honest, but it's like that with a lot of the features. It's like you've written something, some people use it. Who knows who's actually using it? We don't generally get too much detailed feedback from our customers of every single feature that they like or don't like. Usually, even if actually we did some feedback recently, which you helped participate in, which was nice. But it's it's high level. It's not like getting into the weeds of all of the little firmware features.
You should do a survey or something. Seriously, man, it's product market fit, finding out like who's using what features in your product and like what do people love? What is annoying to people?
Yeah.
And then you can like really tailor it. I don't know like who your main customers are. But you should do that for every big customer. Just be like, what do you like? What do you need?
Yeah.
How do you decide what features to implement in your like in the software that you write? Like, what's that process like?
Well, we obviously track feature requests. Unfortunately, we can't always implement all of those, or even at least necessarily on the platform that people want us to implement them on. So it's an interesting balance between collecting a feature request list of people that we've grabbed over time and business case for doing it. Obviously, it costs money to implement everything, and but our Mark III, the Pixlite Mark III that we've been working on, we've crammed in a lot of features into that. In fact,
so that's still not out yet, though.
Yeah, it's not
okay.
out
Cool.
yet,
Yeah,
but
we're still using Mark II.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I should have clarified that. But yeah, look at that. That's almost ready. A lot of the hardware for that is going through certifications at the moment. So, but once that processor comes out, it's going to be pretty flexible for the years to come for us to develop more features on too, because it's been architected in a way that's more modular and from the ground up, we'll be able to extend on it into the future. So I'm pretty excited about that. The pixel counting thing that you talked about before it's interesting because I've actually thought further about that. And, on our Mark III hardware, most of the controllers will have current sensing on them.
Yeah.
So there's no reason you can write an algorithm that says, all right, try turning on LEDs more and more and more of them. And then, when you stop seeing current changing, you can figure out how many LEDs are actually connected to that output. So you could even automate what you were just talking about.
Yeah, you'd have to. There's a lot of factors that can affect the current draw of a pixel, including temperature, including whether it's an RGBW pixel, like how that pixel is constructed. But I think that would be a really cool feature. I'll tell you though, man, the biggest improvement to that feature would be the ability to advance forward and backward with the keyboard, with the up and down arrows. Seriously.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing.
Yeah.
So can you tell us anything about the Mark III? Because you've been working on that for a long time. I know everybody who has ever used a Pixlite has probably used a Pixlite MK2. I've actually never even used an MK1, so I don't really know the difference, honestly. But like MK3, I'm so familiar with your second gen hardware.
Yeah.
What's going on with the third? Can you give us a sneak peek or tell us about any features that you're excited about? Or
yeah, sure. I mean, the core processor is changed. It's again, like I said before, it's also still an SCM processor, but it's a newer architecture and it's got some more features on it that we're taking advantage of. So I
bigger,
guess
better, smaller, faster.
Yeah, faster. The software has been written better and it takes advantages of more of the hardware. So you could get hundreds of frames per second if you need to.
Oh, that's great.
From an art point of view, that translates to being able to, implement better gamma correction. So
yes,
I think that'll be nice. Even if you've got 8-bit pixels, if you can it depends obviously on a lot of factors. Like if you connect 1,000 LEDs to the output, which is a nightmare to practically do, but some people do, then it's not going to be a awesome refresh rate. But
well, that's on the designer of the piece.
Yeah,
I don't think that you can correct for that. If somebody overloads an output, that's on them.
Yeah.
But I think that better gamma correction is something that we've always strived for.
Yeah,
that's why we migrated away from the 28XX pixel, 2812, because their dynamic range sucks. Their PWM rate sucks.
Yeah, 100%. They do. They definitely do. But with when you can achieve really fast frame rates, you can also then start toggling. You can sort of have persistence of vision on 2 levels. So with the PWM rate, you obviously got persistence of vision in the LED itself, turning the LED on and then off, but it looks just on to you at a certain brightness. But if we can control the LEDs and tell them to change their data really fast, we can achieve persistence of vision between frames. So, we can then tell, if you want to effectively tell it to be value 1.5 for an 8-bit pixel, we can say, okay, be value 1, now be value 2, now be value 1, now be value 2, really, really fast. Then it sort of looks like value 1.5.
So how would you do that in hardware, or would that be like something set up in the firmware that you write, or would that be something that you would have? Like, I understand how to drive pixels at like 100 frames per second from our mapping software through your controllers, and we can do that now.
Yeah. Well, no, it's done in the firmware. So if you imagine you've got lighting software sending 40 frames per second, the Mark III processor will sit there and it will output 40 frames per second by default as well. Like it'll sync itself onto the source. But if it's capable of doing 200 frames per second, or I don't know exactly what the numbers are that are required, to be honest, off the top of my head, I've forgotten for dithering. But in between every time you give us new data, we can output maybe 10 times to the LED back and forth to change between these two values. That means we can give it a better response. So the gamma correction is a curve that you can control in the Pixlite settings, but it's really work that the Pixlite processor is doing to change your 8-bit data a little bit, into a logarithmic shape.
Yeah, well, it's like, to me, gamma correction and the brightness curve and the dynamic range comes down to when you're dimming, when you have content that's not 100% on for the 3 color channels or 4 color channels, when you're dimming down to 50%, does that actually look like half the way between full on and full off? And when you're doing fades, where content fades across arrays of LEDs, how smooth are those fades? How smoothly do areas of dim content and bright content fade between each other? And that's for me, that's always been a matter of improving the pixels that we use, right?
Yeah.
Have higher PWM rates in the pixels, and then, I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. I've never been able to adjust gamma curve through the processor before.
Yeah, well, you can adjust the gamma curve through Pixlite Mark II as well, if you've got pixels that actually can apply gamma correction to, but they have to be greater than 8 bits. And to be honest, that's always going to be the best way to do it. Just especially as they become more and more common, and there's God knows how many pixel chips available now. More and more of them are starting to have 12 or 16-bit. That'll always be the best way to do it. But the other stuff is just so common. Some people, when they think of pixels, they think literally WS28 something. So, it's so for those users, hopefully you can still get a bit of a performance kick, even though the hardware is not awesome.
Yeah, I mean, most of the pixels that we use are still 8-bit, unfortunately. And it's hard to find an affordable pixel that's 16-bit or even 12-bit that's available to be integrated into the common form factors that we use, like strip or pucks or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's particularly hard with the strips, I think. You've really got to you've almost just got to find an integrated 50-50 lead with something in it. But, if you want to start customizing the strip too much, it does become hard to then also put a more advanced IC on the strip reliably.
Yeah. What's a good like 12 or 16-bit integrated 50-50 chip that you can integrate into like your own form factors of LED strip or pucks or whatever?
I would have to check our own website, to be honest, to give you the
Your website
answer.
is great as an educational resource.
We're trying to do that. We're trying to put a bit of focus on that, definitely. But, an IC that's not integrated, like the MY92 series, they're great. They're 16-bit drivers. And if you're creating have you created custom PCB fixtures much before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of what we do.
Yeah, so they're a great chip to use on those. We've done some of those as well, and they turn out well because you can adjust the red, green, blue, and white if you're using it current, so you can get the LED itself to naturally get its primary colors mixing together nicely, and then you can also apply gamma correction with 16-bit data from Pixlite. So it's like
where is that feature in the Pixlite? The Pixlite I've never seen that.
There's where you select the pixel chip. There's 3 sliders down the bottom.
Yeah,
or 4 if it's RGBW, and you can just you probably haven't seen it because it's on by default. So if you've ever used 12 or 16-bit pixels with Pixlite Mark II, unless you've purposely disabled it, you've already been taking advantage of gamma correction built into the controller. Basically, it defaults to a value of 2, and that number is just basically affecting the shape of the logarithmic curve that it maps it onto. If you turn them all down to 1, it's nothing. It's like linear.
Yeah. Interesting. That's cool, man. I'm gonna have to get myself some 16-bit pixels.
Yeah, you should. They're cool. And if you do a little demo side by side, you'll never go back again. You're just like, wow, the difference is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess that's one feature that's probably not really actually that relevant to a lot of our customer base. Like they wouldn't really care too much about that, but for like artistic sort of installations like what you're into, it's certainly a cool little one. They'll have some dual gigabit Ethernet ports as well, so you can daisy chain them.
That's great. So it's got an Ethernet switch built in.
Yeah, it's got an Ethernet switch built in, and that Ethernet switch. This is cool. I can talk about all the real nerdy aspects of it with you. But
let's go. Let's do it, dude. Let's get into it. Let's get into it.
Switch IC has a type of memory in it called TCAM, which is like with RAM. You can say what's the data at this address, and it will tell you back this is the data at this address. But with TCAM, you can say here's the data, and it'll tell you back this is the address that's located at at the same speed that RAM will, which is I've probably just gone into too much detail. But the bottom line is you can set up these rules in the silicon to sort of match certain patterns. So we can match patterns within Ethernet frames, and we can then apply like firewall rules to them. So basically, if you've got gigabit traffic going through, but you don't want to overload the processor, the Pixlite processor, we can filter out all this junk traffic and only forward the stuff that it actually wants.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I guess there's part of that is just a robustness thing, but also there's some software out there that broadcasts ARPANET, rather than unicasting it. So that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's just bad practice.
It is bad practice. Yeah, that's right. But, you could do that and it will be okay if you do that with this.
Yeah. I mean, like in the installations that we do, that's super bad form, because if you're in somebody's corporate office and you're just splooging ARPANET data across their company network, IT people get pissed off. People are like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, I think I'd be asking for my own VLAN if I was doing something like that.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, we do that anyway, but we always unicast.
Yeah, that's it.
So that's cool.
But,
so
some people don't have the they don't even understand what that means.
Sure.
That's not them being stupid by any means. It's an advanced sort of networking to even just understand that. It's not the kind of thing that, for example, a signage company that is used to dealing with LED strips, they don't understand that kind of concept. And so the more we can make the products more resilient to things being done incorrectly, the more wider sort of market appeal, we can get, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's cool, man. So having a built-in Ethernet switch is really key. It just eliminates another piece of hardware, and it allows your device to be used in kind of like a serial chain method, which is really nice. So what else? What are some of these features that you've packed into the firmware that you're stoked about?
Ability to record and play back content is.
Oh my God! Yes. How long and across how many universes?
Well, you'll be able to do it for the full number of universes that the controller can handle, which is 96 pixel universes. But the frame rate where you can record at will obviously vary depending on how much data it is that you're trying to record.
That is so. I've been looking for a reliable way to record and play back ArtNet data for a while, and I've been using NTEC's pixel recorder thingy.
Yep.
Which is fine. Yep. It's fine, but it's a feature that it should just be built into the controller. It should be,
Yeah, and it's been hard. We've had people request from us before, what can we use to do that, even if it's a third-party device, so that we don't have to have a whole computer there. With
NTEC's thing does it. It does it fine. I've used it before.
But it's pretty new. It's pretty recent.
Yeah. It's been around. It's actually just now been the thing is, it's you've been able to record 2, 4, 6, 8 universes here and there.
Yeah.
Any installation that uses LED pixels, man, is going up into the 20, 30, 60, 80 universes pretty quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It
and that's the problem. That's where there's limited options. To be honest, I actually still think there's a place for a device like that. That is a central place to record it. And I think if you're going to have quite a few controllers in the display, that might make more sense than trying to record bits and pieces of it to multiple controllers at the same time. But
no. You want a central one. You want a central place where you record your show, you play it back.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Is it would you have to have a master controller that fed out to the other controllers, or can you do
the way that it's working in the version 3, well, actually it's not going to be in firmware version 1, but the way that it's gonna work is it's a distributed content sort of record and playback. So if you were recording to multiple devices at once, you would still need a way to trigger them, to play back. It depends on your use case, really.
How do you synchronize? So say you've got a big installation. Say you've got I don't know, three of the 16 output pixelights, and you want to record a show coming in from Madrix. You design a show in Madrix, you play it back on your pixels. You want to say, I don't want to leave my laptop here. I don't want to buy a media server.
Yeah.
I want to play my show back into these pixelights. Describe that workflow.
Well, to actually generate the recording in the first place, you'll want to trigger them to start recording, which you could do through, the most crude way would be literally through a web interface, manually on each board, pressing, record, and then pressing stop.
How do you synchronize them?
Then
do you have to synchronize them?
Well, yeah, that would be the most crude way to begin it, and then rely on some kind of loop detection in the controller to sort of trim bits of that out so that you've got a nice recording in each one. But you could also start a recording through an ArtNet trigger or some other means like that. If you've got a physical DMX network, if you've got a lighting console that you're trying to integrate with it all, they'll have, the DMX on Mark III can be input or output. So you could use that to trigger things or sort of take a bit of live control over it. So maybe you want to, have a fader physically on your desk that can control the intensity up and down. It could do that kind of thing as well. But I digress from triggering. The
Well, no,
actual,
say you have a show that's playing across like 3 or 4 of your controllers.
yeah.
How would you like record, like trigger a start record on all of them, record a show? Could you do it into like a set of files? Like this is scene 1, file 1. This is scene 2, file 2.
Yeah, you could start. Well, the user interface for this isn't complete yet. Maybe I need to get your input. But you
Dude, we
could,
should work on it together, man. We
yeah,
should
totally.
totally work on this together.
Yeah, you would be able to sort of break it down into different shows. So you might say, I'm going to start recording whatever arbitrary name you want to call your show. To actually start the device from doing the recording, it could be like listening for a trigger, something. So you might be like recording universes 1 to 100 of ARNet. You might say universe 101, also just listen into that. And when you see channel 1 do something, then start recording. And when you see it do something else, then stop recording to
Yeah.
help keep them synced. So I think that would be, if you really wanted to be precise about it, that would be probably the best way to go.
That would be a great way to be able to trigger start and stop.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I've been waiting for somebody to come up with like a really robust way to record like dozens of universes, because right now, like NTech's, you can do it with NTech. It's a little bit kludgy. You do trigger start and stop via a web interface, and that actually works fairly well, but it's only one device. And that's the thing, is that like you've got a single device where you're recording your universe. And I think you can do up to like, I can't even remember. I think it's like 40 something universes. It's enough for like a signage project,
Yeah. Now, what I think, if you're going to have many pixel controllers in the one display, I'm not convinced yet that even the record and playback that we're building in would really be the suitable way to run it. I think a central device would be better ultimately and easier to manage, because you do just have to worry about doing it on one, and then it's just like a computer replacement. The rest of them just passively listen. But
Well, to
that
be
device
fair,
needs to be able to do 1,000 universes or something like that.
Well, I mean,
let's make
so
it.
to be fair, your devices, like, what is a Pixelite? What is a Pixelite 16 or MK216? What is how many universes does that deal with?
It can do up to 96 pixel universe.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's so many fucking universes.
Yeah. And it's
like, when do you use more than 96 universes?
When do you use more than that in total?
I mean, like, there's most of my projects fall within 100 universes. Sometimes they go beyond that, depending. But like, most of the stuff we do is architectural, and very little of it is like, like an LED wall. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. And to be honest, I think most of our customers would use the product in a way that they're not even close to utilizing the maximum theoretical number of pixels you can have on an output. Like, of course, there's customers that do that, but it's more, especially, that's a little bit of, I'd say that's a bit of a remnant in a sense from the Christmas lights hobbyist community, where people will actually do that, because it's out of your personal budget, and your time is, I suppose, free because you're doing it as a hobby anyway. Like, that whole point is that it's something you do with your time. Whereas commercially speaking, it would cost you more money to do that than it would to just use more controllers and connect more outputs, because of all the other complications with the electrical wiring. So
yeah, that's what we do. We essentially we connect pixels to the outputs as is convenient, and as saves time and labor. And that is very rarely using the full output potential of an output.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, that's huge, man. Recording and playback, that's a big one.
Yeah, so to be honest, I'm surprised that you have that perspective, because so much of what you do is more, I don't know, interactive, or I get the impression, there's some...
It's actually not interactive generally. Like, sometimes it's interactive, but mainly it's playing back complex shows. And, like, why leave the recording studio at the fucking installation if you could just leave a CD?
Yeah. True.
Yeah. That's cool though. So what else you guys got planned? Any generative patterns or anything?
No, I think we've thought about that, and I think it would our philosophy is a bit more, it'd be better for one of the countless computer software packages that have their own little niche way of doing something to be able to generate that content,
Yeah.
than what we could possibly try. And I mean, where do you even begin? Like, every different software package is sort of, I guess, geared towards a different market or application or use case or style.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do
That
you
makes
even
sense.
possibly try and do that? I don't know. Like, what we would hopefully like to do instead of that is just have perhaps, the record and playback kind of gets around that in a sense, because people can record their own and then deploy them onto boards that they ship for multiple different installations. Or
Yeah.
we could even have a library per se of effects where people can download them and just save them onto the device rather than having the device trying to generate them in the first place.
Yeah. So how about saving data to and from those devices? Like I've talked to you guys about this before, but having like a backup setting where you can essentially create like a backup of your configuration like you do in a router.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
that's overdue. You guys got to do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. The Mark III has got that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a totally different configuration paradigm with that, though. Like, there'll still be the Advotech Assistant tool to help you discover and manage a whole series of them, but it'll be a different software version and it'll have a whole bunch of new features in it. And then the actual device configuration is web based. So double click on it, it pops up a configuration tool that's
Oh,
actually
interesting. So
sort
it's
of, it's a,
browser based.
yeah, it's a single page application. So it's like I don't know if you've heard that terminology in web before, but it's basically like an application that's running in your browser. So it's not like literally click a link. All right, I'm going to go to a new URL, wait for that to load. Static page. It's live, interactive. There's little graphs that can show you your frame rate and things, and it's all pushing. There's a bi-directional link, between the controller and your web browser.
So how do you in a paradigm like that, one of the coolest things about your firmware, the application, is the discovery feature.
Yep.
Like I can open that application up on a computer, and even if I'm in the wrong domain, I can like find all the controllers on the network and then change their IP addresses. And I don't
Yeah,
have to go and fuck with the IP address of my machine or any of that.
yeah,
I can find everything on the network related
yeah,
to Advotech, and then I can configure it.
yeah.
How are you doing that with a web app?
Well, all of that will still exist, and it will be even more feature rich. So there'll still be the Advotech Assistant tool, V3,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it'll discover controllers. But when you double click on them, it'll load the configuration interface from the controller and display it in a web browser pane. It doesn't actually go into your computer's web browser. It looks like it's part of the Assistant tool, but what it's actually doing is going to the controller, grabbing the web interface application off it, downloading it really quickly, and then displaying the application dynamically to you. So, it's easier to do updates as well. But
Sounds really slick.
the discovery mechanism is still all going to be there, and in fact, a little bit more advanced too. So if you've got large installations, it'll reliably find every controller every time, regardless of what other sort of traffic is going on there. And it could be routed across VLANs if you want to get fancy and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's super cool, man. Now, this MK3, are they available? Like, what form factor are they going to take? Are they only going to come in the pro editions, or are they coming in both?
Yeah. Look, we're developing a whole range of new hardware at the moment as well, which will be what these Mark III processors run on. So I guess you could lump it into a category called Pro, but really there'll be lots of categories within the hardware itself too. Like, there'll be hardware that's designed for indoor use. There'll be stuff that's designed for weatherproof outdoor use, and even touring with or without power supplies in it. But in terms of what you obviously use our PCB product a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the core, and that's what our business has been built from. But we're not going to keep making PCB only products. We're not going to
Yeah.
keep
It makes sense,
making
man. It
new
really
ones.
makes sense.
Yeah, for many reasons. But yeah, I think that it'll be a better experience overall because it'll be more robust. Even if you want to install it into your own box with other things, it's not like you're not touching a circuit board. You know,
Yeah.
it's got some little plastic at least enclosure, and it can have all these new products will have more protection built in. So
Yeah.
I think the products have been pretty reliable so far, but there's still can always be room for improvement, and we're definitely doing that on the new hardware as well, with ability for people to just mess things up and still it's okay.
They're incredibly reliable. Even the PCB versions,
Yeah.
it's funny, man, because like we've deployed so many of those things, and they've like occasionally will break one, but it's rare. And you know what we actually do? It is kind of like our like de facto deployment of your PCB versions. Do you know what Flex Seal is?
Flex Seal,
It's
like
a
a silicon.
it's a paint. Yeah, it's paintable rubber.
Okay.
So we paint your PCBs with Flex Seal. No matter what.
Yeah, I think I heard you mention previously you put it in an epoxy, sort of like you've done it with one.
It protects it against ESD. It protects it against moisture. We can take that Flex Seal coated PCB and we can put it in an like an outdoor enclosure and be confident that even if the enclosure leaks, it's not going to fry the board. Like we have those things all over the place, man.
Yeah,
and indoor, outdoor, and they're bomb proof.
Yeah, well, one thing that we did pretty early on in our hardware, even in the Mark II series, is use industrial rated electronic components. So they'll, I don't know if you know, but most electronic components come with different temperature ratings. So we use industrial range. So because some of the places they were getting put, especially over in the States, it was cold, like real cold.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's been great to see them work reliably in those environments for sure.
Yeah. That's cool, man. I mean, I think that was one of the main reasons we were attracted to the product. It was like, wow, this is so it's so robust. It's really hard to break them.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. So who else is using this thing? Like who else? Like I know Timo uses them. Like who else off the top of your head? Who are some notable creatives?
Creatives in your world. I think Obscura.
Oh yeah, well they actually went out of business.
Have they been bought by
Madison Square Garden?
Yeah, that and they're doing some dome. I've seen this thing online where they've got this massive dome, and I'm not sure when you were talking to someone else on the show once before, you were talking about. I'm not sure if that's what you were talking about, but that thing was awesome in theory.
Yeah. Well, Matthew Reagan is was a developer for Obscura. He did a lot of their touch designer programming.
Yeah.
And we talked about that a bit. He's a good friend.
Yeah.
He's cool.
Yeah. That's who you were talking to. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
I don't know all of them off the top of my head. It's been harder and harder, to be honest, to stay in touch with who our customers are and have that sort of personal relationship with them as time goes on.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we're getting to have a conversation, man. I really enjoy having a relationship of some kind with the people who build the tools that we use. I like to at least know who they are.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes it so much easier to trust a tool when you know who makes it.
Yep.
And you kind of know what they're all about.
And I think that there's a lot of innovation that comes out of that as well, with particularly your industry. I mean, it's different for every industry. There's different innovations that happen, but I feel like the artistic light artists, that's where you kind of pushing the boundaries a bit. Like you guys will break things and you know what I mean? Try and improve it and actually take the time to give that feedback. Whereas other industries, it's so much more commercial and it's just a means to an end. And you know what I mean? So I love that you're so interactive with us.
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. It's been good getting to know you guys and learning what your process is.
Yep.
So are you planning on when you push out the new Pro MK3 model, line of products. Are you going back to LDI? Are you going to do some marketing stuff? How are you going to approach that?
We definitely need to do that. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I don't know when that'll be back. Are they doing a virtual thing
I don't know.
next?
I should touch base with them. They may be doing something this year. I don't know.
Yeah. Definitely need to get along to that, and we can catch up in person.
Yeah, I was just going to say, man, you make sure you let me know when you're down there, and I'd also be very interested in, just kicking it at your booth, or like talking to you about what you're doing for a booth, or any of that stuff. It'd be cool to like.
We need to get into all of that. We've been we're engineers, like very focused on just making something that we think is cool and reliable and has awesome features, you know what I mean, but not so much on sales and marketing. And that's an area that we're working on, and I think certainly having a presence at those shows is going to be something important moving forward. And also good to just help build relationships too, like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you're going to have an installation at LDI, you're going to have to power a really cool LED thing.
That's it. We're going to need someone to design the LED thing for us.
I know, man. That's what I'm saying. LDI, I can't wait to go back to LDI, man. It's a collection of like the coolest nerds that I know in the industry. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's show production people, it's engineers, it's designers, it's a shit ton of people who are trying to find product. It's just such a cool mix. And it's like, I love the energy of that conference. I love last time I went, I wasn't associated with any product or anything. I literally just showed up. I got a free floor pass, and I just know so many people there. I got an Airbnb, and I was just like hanging out with all my friends the whole week. It's so good.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Have you been to any other ones in Europe before? I know you go to Europe a bit.
Yeah, I went to Pro Light and Sound. Yeah. Pro Light and Sound is really cool. That's in Frankfurt, I think, or Hamburg. I think it's in Frankfurt. I'm not sure. Yeah. Anyway, that was a good one. That's massive. It is a massive, massive conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah. That's another one that you guys should absolutely represent.
I think they're two of the key ones. Yeah, it'll be great to go to those. I'm looking forward to the opportunity for sure.
Yeah, I think after COVID, man, there's going to be a real explosion of travel and social expression. I really think that like when people are done being locked, like when people can socialize, we're about to see like the roaring 20s. You know what I mean?
It's going to be great. I mean, yeah, I've got to reschedule my honeymoon actually. I was meant to go to Europe for 6 weeks.
When'd you get married?
A year ago, I got married.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah, I spent 24 hours in Paris afterwards, and then I had to get straight back on a plane and come back to Australia again. So it was a bit of an
son of a bitch.
What I was hoping for.
Yeah. That's cool. You know what you're going to do for your honeymoon?
Well, I've got a baby in the mix now, so I don't know how much that'll complicate it, but hopefully still most of the same stuff. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a good adventure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, listen, man, if you come to the United States, if you come to the West Coast, just let me know. I'd love to kick it in person, hang out, and just drink a beer and get to have some face-to-face time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That'd be great.
Cool. Well, It's almost been an hour and a half. We should probably wrap.
Yeah, true. Probably I've rambled a little bit about things that might be a bit too, I don't know.
Are you kidding me? No, man. That's what this podcast is all about. We should just ramble. It's about rambling.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, of course, dude. I really appreciate it. And let's just keep in touch.
Yeah.
I would love to work with you guys on features in some capacity. Yeah. And anything I can do to help. I'd be happy to.
Yeah,
so
thanks.
Just let me know.
It. We'll do.
Yeah. All right, brother.
All right,
I will
cool.
I'll talk to you